You're listening to the UNR Brushfire Audiobook series. This is edition 71, volume 2, narrated by Alec Brown. If you'd like to read along with me, you can find digital copies of every edition at unrbrushfire.org. A Miner's Task by Cassandra Windwalker. I watch the dark as she chisels out the stars. And I think how long and thankless is her work. We fickle mortals who hang on light as spiders must dangle from their silks. Imagine she our enemy, when hers alone is the patient and weary hand that lifts the hammer. Again. And again, driving herself deeper into the night, till prismed splendor pours, unbroken, out. A 3-Year-Old Drinking Water by Matthew Friday. With adult care, she decants the full glass of fizzy water into her glass, lemon slice swirling on the half-silver surface, 2 hands holding. She repeats twice, studying her efforts, mistakes pooling under the glass. She takes hold of her glass and test sips. No, more water needed. Steadily, she tops up her glass. Sips so little you wonder if it's worth it. Yes, the worth is in sudden exploration. She moves the glass aside to reveal the pool of water. She gives the table an exploratory lick. Back to sipping her glass. No, a new decision now. She gently lays her hands in the pool, feeling the water, clapping the table, smearing the water into angel wings. Mother arrives with questions, wanting an explanation. Reply? I'm making a mess. Bedtime for Antonio by Dorcia Smith Silva. So this is immunity? Watching you sleep, I wonder what it must be like to feel such peace, impenetrable by desperate fears. How do you keep the beasts away? There must be a secret, a back door quieting harm, cloaking danger. Is it your innocence? A byproduct of being only 5? Looking at your face, what is understood is how beautiful your breath looks when it comes in a child's name. Seaweed Sister by Louise Lenink. A boundary line. I touch it with my toes, push it into the sand. It's a length of seaweed, green like paddocks, green like gumnuts, unripe berries, limes, and aphids. All that green plaited together and strewn across the shore. As I play, it's my jellyfish without a head. It's my mermaid's tail. It's my hair, and, like Medusa, I stare and stare. Don't go any further than that seaweed, Dad said. But Dad went further. He's showing my new sister how hands shape sand, showing her what salt water feels like, splashing it into her face, ducking in and out of the waves, their heads afloat like boats adrift. But there's nothing new about her. Older than I, she's new in the way Mum promised my secondhand boots were. And this new smells of another's sweat, another's failure to maintain the soles. A first step, and then a second. The seaweed trails behind me like a tether, and the waves are warmed with their fun. Their joy is sunscreen slick on the surface, and I try not to touch it. When I'm knee-deep, the seaweed rouses, twirling about my ankles and snaking away towards the rocks. It tugs me forward. Jess. Was that my name? The seaweed calls me sister. It's a promise. I press my palms together like when I pray to Mom, when I think she's closest, pressing her cheek to my cheek. And then I dive. Months have passed. Gray months, blinking like moth wings, which bring me on. It's night when I resurface. The waves are calm, they are emerald, midnight, and the fish are darting stars. Brothers, sisters break the surface around me. They rise as moons do from dark, wet storm clouds, their pale green faces turned towards land. I follow their gaze. Jess! My pointed ears flick forward and I squint at the shore. The seaweed of my hair is pulled back as a brother whispers in my ear, "The fishermen. We're here to swallow their bait, steal their hooks, and tangle their lines." My tail twitches. I've enough hooks curled through my cheeks, but that name is a hook of another kind. Brothers, sisters continue east towards the shore, and I hear their laughter over the waves like rain, but there's still that name. As I swim the shallows from where it was spoken, it sounds again from two shadows crouched on the sand. Jess, what about my daughter? She even looks up to you. She could be your world, you know. And Jess? Should I leave her to rot in the ocean? Jess went too far, but your stepdaughter, she could be something to you. Jess is my daughter. She was her mother's daughter, love. Jess! Strange. That name floats over the water's surface like a mosquito. My webbed hands cuff it back towards the shore. I squirm, uncomfortable in the warm shallows. It's a little stifling, a little thick, but then I've swum so long in deeper currents, and I've no longer legs to manage sand and rock and stone. Best that hook be left alone. Brothers, sisters laugh again over the swearing of a fisherman. The two shadows on the sand watch his fishing pole float tranquil out to sea. My tail twitches. I shiver and feel giddy. I laugh this time too as I cut through the waves and join brothers, sisters, as I rejoice in the pull of the currents. And we continue to swim and tease the boundary of the shore and sea. Ode to Hormonal Acne by Grace Picard. Sweet firm-skinned peach, with a core of blood, the lifeline of me. White-veiled, whore-moan all rage, Picasso's rose period in pus on the mirror. The constellations you left, the Big Dipper on my face. Glory is shining in the dark. When I push you out of pores, your joyous sun self begs to be examined. You aren't vain, but you love needles. They'll forge your name in history, take real estate on my chin, cheek, and forehead. Hail acne, full of grace. From the Bugs by Ken Greenlee. A piece of bark flew off the log I was chopping. I looked inside it and saw a huge network of squiggly lines. What are these little scribbles etched in the bark? Maybe it's a secret message from the bugs? A little hello from the insect realm in their own special language? I was thinking of burning this piece of bark right away, but now I have doubts. What is that written there in those carved lines? In those mysterious hieroglyphs, carved into the living bark, this garbled, scribbled message? What if it's a masterpiece? What if the bug who wrote it was the Shakespeare of the insect world? It could be the Bug Bible, or the Magna Carta of the insect kingdom, or an epic literary work. Might be a hot love letter, or a Dear John. Could be bug blackmail. Maybe it's just an advertisement, or bug classifieds. Could be hate speech, or a bug Mein Kampf. It could be a message that sings to the world or seeks to destroy it. It could be a call to arms for a bug revolution. Watch out! Maybe it means nothing. I don't think so. This wasn't accidental. These seemingly meaningless squiggles appear like they make some kind of sense. It's done with too much care not to. Look, it even has fine print. There's text and subtext. You trying to tell me it's just forward munching that created this? I don't believe it. It's too intricate. It means something. I don't care what anyone says. A Sixth Grader's Diary by Vivian Ugaldi. April 30th, 2009. Today, you became a convict. You broke every law known to man and sixth graders alike. The day started as normal, waking up at 6:30, putting on your Wrangler jeans and floral short-sleeve shirt because mom still shopped for you and tried her best. You left with her at 7:30 a.m., driving 20 minutes to school to wait until 8:15 for your day to begin. Your vocational class this week was PE. The teacher, with her headset mic and golf shorts, met you all outside on that one-hoop basketball court where most girls gossiped and most boys picked their nose. She's holding 2 mesh drawstring bags that are lumpy. Today was the day. Dodgeball. The one game you could survive without having to be athletic in any sense of the word. Your PE teacher, who you've had since kindergarten, relays the rules for the 16 trillionth time in the form of a monologue so lengthy, even a Shakespearean actor could never memorize it. You've been split into the team with the twin football kids, so there was a chance for your survival. Except today, you were the hero. You had control. You had accuracy. You were at the top of the team, and you were killing it. And then, disaster. The game was paused, and PE teacher had to re-explain that headshots were not allowed under any circumstances, but you didn't hear that. Instead, you stared at your target, the tall, skinny kid you never really talked to except for the times you were on the bus together, and wanted to use his flip phone to play the Guitar Hero tutorial continuously. He was egging you on, thinking you weren't ready. But you were ready for this from the moment you woke up this morning. PE teacher finished her speech with a hearty yell of, "Game on!" That's all you needed to hear. Your machine of a body took charge, winding up and chucking the 4-inch diameter foam ball right at tall skinny kid's chest. You released the ball, waiting for the glorious joining of dodgeball to tall skinny kid. But you forgot one detail. You forgot to let PE teacher leave the battlefield. She was in the crossfire and it wasn't looking good. You watch in slow motion as the ball, which would have met your target impeccably, meets the face of PE teacher. The entire world stops. You, a 6th grader, hit a grown-up in the face. You're finished. You're done. You're lost. You are dead. Everyone rushes to PE teacher, waiting to see any bloodshed or out-of-place bones. You stand, frozen. Extra artillery in your left hand falls to the floor. You stare and wonder, how will they kill me for this? PE teacher is hunched over, her hands clasping your cheek. The 6th graders ask, "Are you okay?" PE teacher responds, "I'm fine." She wasn't fine. She rises again, removing her hand from her face, letting her sunglasses fall, having broken from the impact. The class is over, and so is your life. As long as everyone else just kept this on the down low, no one would know, and it would be fine. We all funneled back into the door, and not 1 second went by before someone blabbed. "Mr. Parsons, guess what Vivian just did? She almost killed the PE teacher." There was no turning back. It was time to take the plunge, accept your fate, and walk the plank. But you have someone there who is going to protect you, and about to induct you into their group. The president of the cool kids and his 2 associates approach you, looking like the heads of a mafia family. They looked and nodded, saying one sentence that turned the whole day around. They gave you their stamp of approval. "Hey, that was pretty cool. We never liked her anyway." You have peaked. Yes, it's 6th grade, and yes, it was one of the least important years of your education, but this is your shining moment. You are the king of the castle, and now in with the cool kids. This means you are open for a higher trade status at lunchtime, and a better spot in the recess snack line. There was no going back. The least you could do was buy a PE teacher a new pair of sunglasses, and now, with your new high status, you had to make an impression. Mom spent her hard-earned income to buy a pair of white $7 sunglasses from the small kiosk in the far back corner of the local Rayleigh's. You returned to school on Monday, new sunglasses in hand. You walk to class, acting the same and awkward as usual. Vocational class comes around again, and everyone is herded outside once again. For the first time in a while, you decided to run by choice. To PE teacher, you flail while you jog, and present the sunglasses to her like a gift for royalty. She does not accept them. You did not plan for this. The plan was to give her the glasses and get out, but she declines. You attempt again and again, but she still declines. You have to keep trying, your new coolness is at stake, but she still says no. Now you are left with new sunglasses and a bruised ego. A month is gone, and you have returned to your middle-class social status. It is your last day of 6th grade, and PE teacher decides to have a powwow of togetherness and sharing, also known as community circle. You and 29 other 6th graders sit and share their favorite moment from their seasoned years of elementary school. You and the first few share moments of great tetherball tournaments and foursquare showdowns, until your friend, your compadre, your amigo, changes the topic. She retells the war story of your dodgeball shot. From then on, the remaining 20 students shared the same memory, and you were back on the top. The memory will always be there for you, but only you will remember that month of time you had. Now you pay for car insurance and electricity, and are still in the middle of the proverbial heap. Pipeline by Robert Wabazall. The route home was as familiar as the neighbor's dog who shat on the lawn, enraging, annoying my father. The full length of Grand, then a jig past 3 houses on Lee, until the vacant lot that cut to our yard. We called it the Pipeline, that lot. A no-man's land between the houses, an unclaimed windfall where pickup games, with makeshift bases and ragged balls, were played amid dirt, and stones, and shards from shattered soda bottles, and more of that roving dog's leavings. The next block over, sweet peas raged wild in early summer, planted once by who knows who, guarded by crumbling concrete posts, and rusted cable installed by whom? Pipeline for what? To where? It was our kingdom, and we did not care to know. Elocution by Laura Handley. They told us that the way we speak was wrong, the music in our voices an error. With all they have to show, guns, boats, cars, gold, steel, semiconductors, and the fatal stress of formality, how can they not be right? Flat and colorless is the ideal, straightforward speech that shares nothing of the nature of the speaker and stays out of the way of business. So we have bleached and flattened, taken to gray box houses and stiff black suits. But they still cannot accept us, not quite yet. For every so often, a songbird in flight, shedding rainbow plumes, bursts forth from our mouths. Until we fix this flaw, they say, success will elude us. Life at 120th Street by Dorcia Smith Silva. Mister, do you have some spare change? I ask him. He stares at my face, and disgust rises within him like steam after summer rain. He runs his dissecting eyes over my watermelon stomach. Pity, like that flattened pigeon over on Houston Street. Ma'am, can you give me... She glimpses at my second-hand hat and threadbare jeans. Her voice comes in vacillating waves. Lord, help that child! Just look at those jeans! By the devil, they've gone to war and have lost! Yes, they have gone to war. My personal war of hand to mouth, flesh to bone, human to beggar. Do you think I really want to ask you for money? I'd much rather be in class at Lincoln High, listen to Ellington at West End Cafe, visit Mama at City Hospital, hang out at Washington Square Park, and feed the pigeons even. So when I ask for money, do not claim to be deaf. Do not cross the street. Do not look away. Do not pity me. Just drop some change in my flat open hand. Dollhouse by Danny Putney. He called me his little bird and patted my head every time I argued, I want to see you more than every other weekend. He clenched his jaw, yelling into the phone every time coworkers were imbeciles and interrupted his weekends with me. He said he loved me after sex and a cigarette, but every time we fucked, he looked at himself in the mirror, never embraced me. He showed me pictures of his dog, a golden retriever. Every time I asked to see his family, he growled, "Stop asking." He told his friends I was his cousin every time he brought me in public. I thought, never said, it's not normal to fuck your cousin. He left me the day his wife got pregnant. Every time he makes love to her, does he look in the mirror? A Bullfighter by Aurelio Cortez Rivera. Tonight, a bull kissed me, crawled out my throat with such a roar my chest became two, and all I felt was the anger in my veins, whispered to my fists about the power of pain, and how much I wanted it to touch you. So when you snuck into my room, with my name on your lips and lust between your legs, the bull ripped out of me, with a rage so loud the house was torn from all the screams, coming from me, from you, from her. Mommy finally learned the things Daddy would do. Do Not Burn Your Bones by Danny Putney. Within this apocalyptic commons, the tragedy is not in the blood you lose, but in the ghosts that penetrate your heart. Survival must be your songbird, as you fix your gaze upon the horizon, unflinching, unblinking. The whispers of afterlife taste like honey. Ignore their sweetness. Trust your scarred skin, chapped lips, tired bones. This body is yours to keep. Immigrant by Aurelio Cortez Rivera. You ripped off my skin, putting it on as a disguise, going around town, shooting people just for fun. Who did it? The country asked. He did it, you said, pinching my skin in the air, waving it like a sign. They did it. They did it. The monsters from a different land. White people can't dance, so that the right people know who to trust in the darkness. By Griffin Peralta. When I ask my father why he does not speak Spanish, why I do not speak Spanish, he tells me that his mother watched her mother get murdered by Pancho Villa. He tells me she carried that fear over the border like a coyote gnawing her heartstrings. He tells me that she told him he must never speak Spanish. That she told him time and again that the family was American now. Americans speak English, she'd say. When I was 14, I bought a ticket to my first school dance. When I asked my mother how to dance with my first girlfriend, she taught me the square steps of a ballroom waltz. Years later, when I ask a white girl friend of mine why she has painted her face like a sugar skull for Halloween, she tells me she spent 2 years in Mexico with the Peace Corps. She tells me she learned to love the culture there, that she lives it authentically, that she even knows the dances. I ask her to teach me, but I am a poor student. I wonder if that means she is more Mexican than I am. If I cannot move my hips the right way, am I white passing? Is this what my grandmother wanted? That no one would ever ask me to cha-cha? If I can learn the steps, can I have my ancestry back? If I place my grandmother's portrait on my mantle next October, will she pass through and see that I am American now? If I put my great-grandmother's portrait on my mantle, will she come to me with marigolds from her unmarked grave on the outskirts of a town in Mexico whose name is now a family secret carried to the next life? Will she teach me to dance? Could we dance away Pancho's violence? Could we dance away her daughter's shame? If I can learn to move my hips just so, could we shake down the border wall? Could I learn the language my grandfathers learned to love in? Could I read Zapato and feel pride? There is a cognate I know. It means the same in English and in Spanish. So, if any one of my ancestors asks me if I am different from the colonizer, I can say, no. She turns 91 in April and still dreams of her mother, by Rachel McGinnis. She was living with her sister Ida on Franklin Street, beneath the shade of a peach tree. her mother's rosary sparkling in the window, roses laid at the feet of the statue of the Virgin Mary. Ida buys a fur coat that afternoon, haggling with the merchant in Italian because she refuses to speak English in public, bills crisply creased in the sleeves of her pocketbook. Milk jugs sit on the front porch next to the rumpled copy of the daily newspaper, listing the births, deaths, and church schedules next to advertisements for toothpaste. She is always a child in her dreams, wearing her best pink dress with the bow on the front, embroidered flowers branching down the sleeves. Her mother stands in the garden, carrying a suitcase and a loaf of bread, coat folding into the dirt. She starts to run, windows and walls falling away, reaching for her arms, still strong after all this time. If Dementia Were a Worm, by Jordan Becker. It would wiggle its way down your auditory canal, passing through an ivory layer, searching for the hippocampus that holds the memories you have molded, shaped, and trained your entire life. Here, the worm begins to nibble. Sounds, final words from loved ones, tastes of old salt on your tongue, sights of familiar faces, textures, hands come to hold yours, pressures on your forearm barely felt, smells of lilies and familiar perfumes, would inch forward, struggle to run the electrical track of nerves from wrinkled and freckled ear to lobes enclosed in honeyed yellow plaque, before they are devoured eagerly by the greedy mouth of a worm that lives in your head. If dementia were a worm, plump and pink, no one could deny the gluttonous gray goo that oozed and dribbled from both your ears as the monitors ran flat, because the worm didn't bother to wipe the sides of its mouth. Butchering, by Frederick Bassett. I had long retired my shotgun to the closet, but I still argued with my philosophy students that hunting for food was no different than killing cattle for the same purpose. And I claimed with absolute certitude that the hands of every non-butchering, meat-eating person were just as bloody as those of any slaughterhouse worker. Once, a student responded with this confession: "I can't eat steak. Reminds me of a cow. But a hamburger is totally different. It's just ground stuff. Could be soybeans." Ah, the workings of the human mind. After the Fact, by Philip Galos. I got the gator in Galveston. A guy had it in the back of an old Dodge van with Louisiana plates. I was talking to the guy because my ride had died, and I was looking for a new one, or as new as I could afford. Don't ask me what I was doing in Galveston. It's not worth the telling. I was done with the place. Too liberal for my blood. The first time I saw the van, it was in the parking lot of the Walmart. It had a for sale sign in the window with a phone number on it. I called the number. The guy answered. He says, "Meet him in 2 hours at Dockside Marine up on Bayou Vista." That worked for me. Gave me time to get back to the room and grab some cash. The next time I saw the van, the guy was standing next to it. He's some kind of mixed breed type, skinny as spit. I looked the thing over pretty good. The paint was burnt, but it seemed solid enough. I didn't take it on any test drive. The guy said it ran great. He said it was good to go wherever. It didn't seem to be leaking anything, so I took his word for it. If you can't trust a guy from Louisiana, who can you trust? When I went to open one of the doors, he stopped me. He said, "Do it real easy. Gator don't like no sudden moves." I figured it was his dog, and he named it Gator, but no. When I opened the door, there he was, 10 feet if he was an inch, and with a maw that could swallow a horse's head. The guy said, "He won't bite you if you don't let him get hungry." I say, "What's his name?" He says, Gator. I'm thinking, enough with the niceties, time for business. I offered him $1,200. He says he wants $2,000. I come up a couple hundred, he comes down a couple hundred, but he gets stuck on 18. I say, does that include the gator? He says, no. I come up to 16. Still no. Okay, last offer, 1,800, and I take the critter too. We shook on it, and I gave him the money. I took care of the paperwork and put on the Texas tags. It was ready to roll. Went and got a half dozen steaks and a 12-pack. I threw the beef to the gator, put the beer where I could reach it, and headed west. The guy didn't lie. The van drove like a dream, and I made it back to Mendocino in 3 days. What a bargain. A good ride and a gator to boot. I figured I'd put him to work guarding my grow. Did I tell you about my wife? Named herself Moonlight. I should have known better to get myself involved with a hippie chick with all her free love and everything. She was such a hot number, I couldn't resist her. Told me later she took me on as a project. Thought she'd convert me. Always tearing up all my gun magazines and my NRA newsletters before I had a chance to read them. But it didn't work. Just turned me against liberals forever. Well, that's all in the past. Ancient history. We split up after a year. She got her own place in town, little cabin on Calpella Street not far west of Caston, and I kept the place in the hills. But we never got a divorce. She's still my wife. Yeah, she's hot alright. Too hot for her own good, sidling up to these slick city boys, getting them to drool, especially that Granville Watkins. Granville Rogers Watkins. GR, everybody called him. He liked it pronounced Grr, but I always called him Granville just to tick him off. I'd been hearing whispers about him and Moonlight the whole 15 years Moonlight and me had been separated. Big show-off with all his money from his grandpa's vineyard that he inherited and then sold, and his platinum pinky ring with a ruby in it the size of a damn grape. Must have weighed more than the finger it was attached to. Had his initials in it. I found that out later. Considered himself a local, but he was still from Santa Rosa, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, back to the story. It was summertime, and Gator was acting out of sorts, just laying around, not eating much. I asked my friend Faulkner, who's from Mississippi, so he should know, what he thought was wrong. He says, why, that lizard's dried out. You gotta get him in water. I say, shit, Faulkner. I need him in tip-top shape by September when the harvest starts. He's gotta be lean and mean. Faulkner says, bring him down to my place. You can put him in my pond. And then I get this idea. I says, yeah, but before we do that, let's take him down to the Kelly House Museum and put him in the pond there. Give the tourists something to think about. So that's what we did. Gator was pretty docile, not feeling too good, as I said. We wrapped him in a tarp, got him in the van, drove to town, parked on Albion Street, half-carried, half-dragged him down to Kelly House Pond. Thought I'd bust a gut getting him over the fence. Faulkner was grunting something fierce, but we did it. Then we rolled him in. He seemed to perk up right away. I thought, this has got to be the sweetest trick there ever was. A live alligator smack in the middle of Mendo Town. So I say, let's go to Dick's place and celebrate. Faulkner says, nah. He's going to go visit a lady friend he knows for a quickie. He'll meet me back at the van in an hour. I say, okay. He heads off towards Caston Street, and I go on down to Main. I walk into Dick's, and who do you think is there? Yeah, that's right, Granville Watkins. He starts pestering me, telling me what he's done with Moonlight, how good she is in bed. I tell him, leave me alone. But he keeps riding me. I knock back a couple beers, and he's making these panting and slurping sounds, and then holding his crotch and calling out her name. Some of the folks in the place are smirking. Some others are real quiet, maybe embarrassed for me, maybe waiting to see what I was going to do. But I don't want trouble. I turn to him and I say, grow the fuck up. Then I walk out. Did I tell you about my hunting knife? God, it's a beauty. Had it custom made for me. 8-inch blade. Just picked it up from the sharpener that afternoon. That's why I had it with me in its sheath hanging from my belt. Probably could have split a hair 6 ways from Sunday. Anyway, after I left Dick's, I walked back up the Kelly House path to get to my van, and I stopped at the pond to see how Gator was doing, but he'd moved from where we'd put him in. I had to go up to the rose garden where I could look down on the pond to spot him, and he was doing just fine. If it hadn't been for the full moon, I'd have never found him. all I could see of him were his big old nostrils above the water. Rest of him submerged. He was waiting for something to eat. That's when I hear the footsteps coming up from Main Street. And guess who it is? Yep, goddamn Granville Watkins. He gets right up to me and puts his face in mine and says, "I'm going up to Calpella Street and satisfy your wife. I'm going to give it to her so good and so hard and so long, she's going to pass out from the pleasure. And when she wakes up, I'm going to give it to her again." And he grabs his crotch like he did in the bar and licks his lips. I don't know what happened to me then. I just sort of popped. Next thing I know, I got the knife in my hand. I don't even remember unsnapping the strap that holds it in the sheath, and Granville Watkins has got his mouth open, but he's not saying anything. I must have stuck him 15 times before he hit the ground. Then I threw my knife in the drink. I wasn't too happy about that. Knife cost me a bundle. I guess I was pretty panicked. Ah well, I figured that was the least of my worries. I mean, there I was with the guy everybody'd seen riding me, laying down dead at my feet. What was I gonna do? I couldn't leave him there. They'd all suspect me. I thought I'd drag him up to the van, but what would I tell Faulkner? So I hauled him to the pond, got him over the fence somehow, and dumped him in. It took Gator about 5 seconds to react. Before I was halfway up to Albion Street, he already had Granville Watkins under the water. When I got to the van, Faulkner was standing there smoking a doobie. I said, "That didn't take long." He said, "Oh man, I had to leave early. She was expecting somebody else." Long story short, Gator did a damn good job disposing of Granville Watkins. Unfortunately, he never got to come home with me to help me guard the crop. One of those gallery owners made a big stink about him being in the pond, not to mention the Kelly House folks, and Fish and Game came and took him away. Then things got worse. Somebody called the sheriff because he didn't like the look of the bloodstains on the path pavers, which I didn't think anybody would notice because the pavers are red anyway. And to top it off, Moonlight reported Granville Watkins missing. The sheriff put it all together and says it looks like Granville Watkins was the victim of foul play. You know how they say it don't rain, but it pours? Guess what happens next? For some damn reason that's a mystery to me, they go and drain the pond. Can you believe it? Well, like I said, Gator done a real good job cleaning up the mess I made, but he missed one thing. When they got all the water out, they found Granville Watkins' little finger, and with the ring still on it. Guess Gator didn't care much for grapes. And wouldn't you know, they found my knife too. Did I tell you that when I got that knife, I carved my name in the handle? So now I'm sitting in a cage in Ukiah, waiting to meet the lawyer Moonlight got for me. Barry something or other. To hear her tell it, he's some kind of legal magician. Hope he can get me a good plea bargain. I don't think a jury would understand. I mean, yeah, I killed Granville Watkins, but I ain't no criminal. Valentines by Gabriel Hoover. He was young and full of potential. She was older than her age dictated. He loved his family and they him. She loved the idea of leaving them all behind. He drank the life of the party. She drank to have the party end. Either way, the two had never met. He saw her organizing records among CDs. She kissed him, mocking Valentines. He pulled out the ring. She gave birth to his boy. He made her his first. She made herself his last. Either way, things just happened so fast. He drowned in a sea of aluminum. She went out to sea, never staying still. He looks for honesty but cannot find himself. She searches for her face underneath her mask. He sees the worst of the world. She's forced to make up what she sees. Either way, the world has never been easy. He never fell in love again. She can't help but fall. He wields wrath like a rusty hammer. She grief like a loaded gun. He is still a child at heart. She shot the child at youth. Either way, they run from the truth. In the end, all he does is drink. At the end, drink is preferable. He believes himself a failure. She flatters herself a success. He approaches his 40s and lives in the past. She lives nowhere, loves nothing, lost in her head. Either way, the heart of the matter didn't matter in the end. If centuries were miles, we'd be light years from done, by Griffin Peralta. A 1,000 years from now, all that is left of us will be bones. An archaeologist will make a dig of us because my skeletal arms will be around you still. Our parts will be indistinguishable. They will build an exhibit to us, the snuggling skeletons, assembled from parts of each other, so that everyone will look on and see that you have become a part of me. 500 years from now, the tree I planted on our 50th anniversary will be marked to be cut down. When the lumberjane raises her axe, she will remember the time I cut a rose every day we were apart. She will know the way the oldest rose wilted and browned, as did my heart, and she will say, "No, this one stays." Like the time 60 years from now, when your casket closes and no one can get me to leave. "No," I will say, as the cops drag me from the cemetery. "This one stays." And I will tell them about the time 20 years from now, when I pulled out my heartstrings so that you could replace the laces on your favorite shoes. 50 years from now, when the hologram is finally invented, I will be the first to use the new technology to make you see all the ways you make me feel. A miner's pick, striking a gemstone, each tiny fragment a cosmos of brilliant dust, hanging like galaxies in their splendor for just a moment. The soil in Death Valley when spring sprouts burst through it just after the first rain in 100 years. The ant with a massive grain of sugar he gets to lay before his queen. The late bird who missed the worm but kept the eggs warm while you were away. The long-awaited Alaskan dawn when the darkness ends on the 31st day. 10,000 years from now, an evergreen will have grown from our ashes and dropped so many pine cones that an entire forest will be blooming in which there are no birds of prey. The mice there sleep peacefully in the ancient shadows of our love. One million years from now, our yellow star will go supernova, and as the atoms which were once us dissolve, they'll feel an overwhelming nostalgia. Ah, yes, this was exactly how our love felt.